Okay, we're back with Fallout Friday, and today we're going to be working on finishing up a couple robots. I've got my Robobrains that were recently released ready to go. We're using GW Leadbelcher Air, basically just going for a dark metallic look. We've already loaded up our airbrush, my trusty Eclipse, and here we go. So, we've got our initial metallic coats done. These are pretty simple, mostly metal. Then we'll do some weathering. We'll be paying primary attention to the dome. So what we're going to do now that these are painted is go ahead and apply the base coat to the domes themselves in order to prepare for our work later. I'm using a Wraithbone layer because I'm going with a fleshy color. I'm going to try to get the brains to show. So we're just going to go ahead and apply this and let it dry while we work with some other things. So that's our initial basing of that. It's pretty rough right now. Probably come back with some thinner coats later. For now, we just wanted to get that started so it had a chance to dry. Now we're going to work on the pneumatics, which are the arms and kind of the waist section. And these, in all of the pictures I've seen, are more of a black plastic, hence why I call them pneumatics. So we're going to go with a dark gray over them. So as we said, we're just looking at the arms here. The brush is a little heavy because of the mixing. So what we're going to do is just kind of apply all of the heavy liquid. Look at that. A little bit of flash that I missed. Or paint peel or something. There we go. Yeah, looks like a little bit of flash that was there. And got that. Okay. When that happens, we'll always find imperfections while we're working. Don't let them worry about you, just move on. Now, because we have some gray left, and rather than waste it, we're going to go ahead and look at the base real quick. We have these flagstones, so we're going to go ahead and pick those out in dark gray as well. Okay, now that we've got a jump ahead on that, time to start looking at the brain. So I have here a light flesh that I'm going to use. It's been a while, so we've got to mix it up good. Let's see what we get here. Very runny. This is not mixed well. May also just be very runny. Now, we're going to try for a brain. What we're going to do is just basically paint the entire thing flesh first, and then we'll begin adding in details. Yeah, this is so runny, but it's making a good transition color at least. Clear up some of those lines. Okay, so instead, let's look at my old standby from P3 Midland Flesh. Yep, you're still good. Alright, so we're gonna give these a couple minutes to dry on the dome. So while that's going on, let's go ahead and apply our Nuln oil to the rubber parts to turn those from dark gray to black. Okay, so that's the rubber and the treads done. So let's go ahead and apply this flesh to the dome and see how we go. Okay, so there's our lovely, lovely brains. So moving on to the next parts, what we're going to be doing is applying a nice blue, which will be the lens. And we're also going to work with some dark brown to apply the ridges and everything on the brain itself. All of the whirls and everything else, all the texturing will be via this dark brown. Now, because we're getting down to some nice detail work, I'm going to make sure that my brown is nicely thinned. And B, I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. So I will do all that and we will return. Okay, so I'm switching over to a 00 brush from my Artist Opus collection. I've also gone ahead and added some heavy red into our brown to give it a little more flavor. So first thing we're going to do, don't need that much on the brush, so we're just going to get a small amount and we're just going to bisect the hemispheres. So we're just going to go for that central line. Doesn't have to be perfect because this isn't going to be very clear. Now that we have that, we're going to add all of the other lines, and the easiest way to do this is just to start some Y branches. So we're just going to go like this and like this. So just a bunch of Y's coming off the brain. So I'm going to go ahead and replicate this throughout, and then we'll move on to the next step. As you can see from a distance, they were fairly brainy looking. So pretty happy with how that came out. Nice even strokes is the key, and a small enough brush to get the lines. Again, I wasn't going for super detailed, and you may also notice that when I was doing the pink, I left that white line around it. And that's because of the final step of this is going to be to make it look like it's sitting in green goo. But before we get to that, we need to go ahead and do the sensor that they have, which is basically like a blue eyeball that sits in the middle. Now, to do that, I actually don't want a detailed brush. I want my older brush because I'm going for a dollop, basically. We're just going to put a single dot of blue, so we want the larger brush so that makes it easier. And those blue, the paint should be nice and dry on the brains, simply because we took so long to do them. There we go, just a dot. Nothing special. Again, because once we go over it with the color of the green, it's going to kind of help fade everything in. So just dot it in and work it around. Okay, now, while we make sure that those brains dry, we're also going to go ahead and look at some weathering opportunities. So we're going to go ahead and take my rust wash, which if you remember is a little sticky, so we're I'm only going to use my old brush to work with it. And what we're going to look at is areas where rust would accumulate. So things like this kind of a vent on the bottom here. So we're just going to apply coming down off of that as if it's worn a bit, and then along the back I have the same sort of thing, and we're just going to try and let it, you know, drip down from there, because that's what we want it to appear like, you know, that the moisture and whatnot, that's not my rust, has built up and kind of caused the rust to drip down. So again, we're going to go ahead and just apply it and let it drip. It's already sucked up the brush. Now, we will also be applying some weathering using brown wash, but we're going to go ahead and do that at the same time that we wash the base. So mostly I'll be focusing on the treads and that lower section where dirt would naturally get thrown up into them. Alright, so for the final part of the brain, we're taking Plaguebearer Contrast, a nice bilious green, and we're going to go ahead and not wash it, we're going to go ahead and mix it with our contrast medium to thin it out some. Probably should have only gone with one drop, but there you go. So we're doing basically a 2-to-1 ratio. And we're just going to coat the entire brain here. There we go. Now that white rim I left, it's going to really pick it up, and it should flow down the top. So I'm going to let those dry a bit and apply another coat. So while it's doing that, we're going to move on to the actual base, and we're going to use our light ochre. Alright, now we're going to apply another coat of our green. Now to finish up the base, we're going to use a light gray to pick out one rock that I saw, and then maybe do a third coat of the green after. Okay, one more coat of green, and this time I'm really just focusing around the bottom edges. I'm going to leave the very top a little lighter. Alright, so we are going to let that dry, ring the base, and then seal it. And then the final actions after sealing will be, of course, to apply the tufts like we usually do. But also, in this case, I'm going to be applying a gloss coat on the top of the dome in order to make the dome shine in comparison. So that'll really help with that glass effect, and that should really finish up our brains. Okay, we have our brain bots all ready to go. I did apply a bit more blue as it had turned more green with another coat of the plague flesh just to tie them together. Now I'm going to use my Vallejo gloss varnish, providing there's still some left. This stuff is... okay, there's still some in here. I'm gonna have to get a new one of that. And apply a bit of water. I want this thin down. So this is just going to give us that glossy dome that we want. In addition, to go ahead and apply our tufts. So again, we're using the Army Painter Highland tufts. Now, I do have 4 of these total that I'm doing, and one thing when you're doing multiple copies of the same model is you kind of want to make sure that they're different. In this case, what I've done, if you notice, is I've rotated the base throughout each of the variants. This way, the bases look slightly different on each one. My glue's being a bit of a pain, so I've got a bit of glue on the brush. we're going to go with our medium tufts today. Right one looks like it doesn't have quite as much gloss on it. It's fine. Just add a bit more. Particularly at the top of the dome. I really want that shine and sheen coming through. Okay, so there are our brain bots finished. And the varnish doesn't take very long to dry, so this is pretty much done. And you can see the effect that we're going for here. Just bring that into focus a bit more. Got that very nice and shiny dome going on. Our brain and eye are kind of look like they're floating in that green goo. All in all, very happy with the results of that. Especially on the tabletop, as you can see when they're that far away. You can zoom in a bit, and you can see even from this distance, you know, they give the desired effect. Alright, so I will see you guys next time on Fallout Fridays.